reports the Chief Executive Strategic Program Update and Group Chief Financial Officer updates. I'd like to welcome Phil and Ross and the team to talk about the Auckland deal, licensing and compliance, as well as fuel preparation. A number of things bubbling away with the Auckland deal, and there's no sense having it if the government departments don't listen. So I look forward to hearing from you too, and any associates required. Thank you.
Thank you, Worship. Morena councillors, nice to be with you. As usual, and as the Mayor's indicated, I'll cover a number of matters. Ross will follow through with a financial update. I note, of course, there's more detail than I'll cover verbally in the report, and some other attachments that give you a bit more meat on the bone as well. I'll start by acknowledging that today is, of course, the last day of the financial year, so Ross will cover some highlights appropriately, but I am pleased to acknowledge that we're finishing the financial year in pretty good shape, a favourable position in terms of savings and revenue and expenditure, and actually the completion against the capital program, at least for the council parent and more generally across the groups, looking pretty good. So, you know, I think you and we can be collectively proud of the amount of work that's been achieved this year. Of course, we have a few headwinds going forward, but that's the subject for another day. I might just note that we've been working actively since your decision on the annual plan around what the makeup, what the profile of the savings target looks like, and what strategies we might need to employ. We'll be bringing that through shortly. The executive team is working through it with general managers and so on now, and it's coming together and getting a bit of shape, but let's save that discussion for another day. Just starting with key, I suppose, government relations reform issues, I note in terms of PC 120, that's progressing along. Half of the local boards have been engaged with now, and by the end of the week, all will have been in terms of their views to inform your decision making shortly. I won't say too much more about that. You're well aware of the underlying issues. In terms of the Resource Management Act changes, the time frame for reporting back has been extended out from essentially this week to the 20th of July, so that's really the update there at this stage. We note and are watching a couple of things that have been in the media, ideas around non-elected members' participation in decision-making and what impact there might be for Hokora. That's simply a watch this space. We don't have detail or clarity yet about what's intended. The other one I would note as well, which I think you might want to have on your radar, is a signal that the funding mechanism for foreign emergency in New Zealand is somewhat in trouble because it's based on levies through insurance premiums, and that landscape has changed, including the fact of households not having insurance to some degree. And there is an idea floating around that that suggests councils might have a role to play in collecting a property-based levy to fund foreign emergency. We don't have details yet, but I just wanted to signal that as something to have on the radar. You will no doubt have views about whether you want that to happen. The Auckland deal, not much to say about that today, other than we continue to put put a program, a disciplined program of work around that, around the deal with our central government colleagues, and that's taking shape pretty well. There is some governance mechanisms to oversee that work program, and those are being put in place as well. I'll touch on, and I note Steve Mutton and others are here if there's any detailed discussion on this. The update in terms of the transport reform, which of course is one of the really big rocks in the organisation that we're focused on at the moment. We've largely completed the design work for how the public transport CCO and the council side of things will operate. We took that out for consultation purposes to the staff. We've collated and considered most of the feedback. We will make some changes to what was intended, as we should, based on the collective intelligence of the organisation and the feedback we've had. So we're right at that point now where that's being considered, and we've gone out this week to recheck certain aspects and complete that consultation process. So we're quite close now to some final decision making around how those structures and operating models will work in the organisation. Of course, there's a range of other work streams that are coming along well, including the decision-making design in terms of local boards and yourselves, where the delegations sit for exactly what activity. So there'll be further details to update you with in that regard. Long story short, you know, we're working to a timeline to have the new arrangements in place and working from 1 October, and we are on track from a project point of view. I'm going to pause at that point. We wanted to update you in terms of the Mayoral Hospitality and Visitor Forum, and I'm going to ask Rob Irvine. Rob, if you wouldn't mind coming forward and updating councillors. We thought this was an area that we might focus on today. Am I allowed to say, Rob, that you've just had knee surgery, hence the crutcher? Oh, and Mervyn Chetty. Mervyn, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. Well, thanks for having us here just to give a brief update in terms of what we're doing on the hospitality sector. So I guess within licensing and compliance, we're putting a lot of strong emphasis on our customer experience. This includes us taking a lot more time to really understand public expectations, making things a lot easier. We all know a lot of our regulations and the way we do things are complicated. A lot of our legislation is really old, and also, it's hard for the public to really understand. So we're taking a big step forward in terms of really how do we actually make things a lot easier for people to understand. The other, I guess, key piece for us is really sort of having a stronger focus around that balance between the high harm, high risk, where we're putting a lot of our effort, but also trying to balance that up with in terms of that local expectation. So we still know across the board there's certain areas that we do need to really focus in on. A lot of, I guess, the issues that we have across compliance is still very local, but also we do need to be sort of thinking bigger and sort of, putting a lot of our more proactive focus on those high risk, high harm areas. So in terms of the work that we've done, we've kicked off some priority work in the hospitality sector. And we all know that hospitality is a very big and important part of the Auckland economy. Many businesses are small and they cannot afford the extra compliance costs that we've put on them. So we've got to make it easier. We know a lot of hospitality work on very slim margins, and again, additional compliance really does put a burden on the sector. We also know that not all hospitality businesses are the same. So again, there's a varied degree of operators out there. We know a lot of the hospitality sector is also obviously new immigrants. So again, it's very important for us to really think about the customers and who we're actually there to serve. We're also sadly seeing a lot of closures. You walk around the streets, you see a lot of shut-up shops. But at the same time, we're also seeing quite a lot of new businesses still starting up. So there's a lot of churn in the sector. And again, it's really important for those new businesses that are starting up, again, that we're there to support them and make it really easy for them. So again, following off from the Mural Tourism and Hospitality Forum last year, we really took time to start engaging with the sector. So we spent a lot of time talking to various groups around the hotel sector and really starting to unpick effectively a lot of the challenges that we had. That enabled us to actually formulate a really strong plan around how we're going to respond. I might just hand over then to Mervyn quickly to step through a couple of points that he's delivered on that.
Kia ora, everyone. Thanks, Rob. Very quickly, in terms of the work underway, following on the stakeholder engagement, the feedback from the hospitality sector included that our processes are pretty complex. The online experience at the moment the council provides is very poor. There's a lot of uncertainty in the licensing process and lack of guidance. So using that feedback, we had a look and see what we can put in place, and the first thing we put in place was we created the Auckland Council Hospitality Hub. The industry representative highlighted opportunities for us to remove barriers to entry and to support businesses in a better way. So we created the Hospitality Hub. It's a one-stop shop which provides supports to new businesses across the range of licensing services that we provide across alcohol, food, and street trading. At this point, there's over 200 business inquiries, new business inquiries that are supported, and the demand is increasing. Our goal is to make council easier to navigate and help hospitality business avoid delays. The next part, just following from Rob, is around key account management and customer segmentation. The industry is pretty broad. Tailored support is really important. We started a pilot with the hotel sector, which is over 140 hotels across Auckland, where we co-designed the licensing approach with them. We provide in dedicated license and offices to support the hotel industry, and we simplified the licensing process as well, noting that the hotel industry is generally a low risk in terms of alcohol harm. The other initiative we put in place is around risk-based regulating, is just making sure we are focusing our efforts in the right areas, that we aim to reduce risk and harm, and making sure that our approach is proportional. An example of this risk-based regulating is in alcohol licensing, where we've looked at the licensing process and we've created risk profiles in terms of low, medium, and high-risk premises. We've simplified the requirements for low-risk premises, such as restaurants and hotels, and we're focusing on high-risk premises, such as off-license, that's mainly the bottle stores. So that makes sure that we're proportional in our approach in terms of supporting the hospitality industry. The last bit is around technology improvement. We note the feedback from the industry around the council's current online offering. Council is looking at options in terms of improving the online experience, and this remains a crucial piece of the equation to better support the hospitality sector. That's a very quick summary of some of the work we're doing in this space. Thank you.
Thank you, Mervyn and Rob. I'll just cover a couple of other things and then hand to Ross if we maybe save questions for a general discussion at the end. You've got a very significant body of work being reported today in terms of recovery, so I won't touch on that, other than I'll just take this moment to thank the team at this critical juncture, and we'll leave the discussion to then. I wanted to very quickly mention what you will have noted in the media in terms of activity with Heart of the City, and the resignation of most of the board of Heart of the City. Just to say that we are in discussions with Heart of the City. There obviously requires to be refreshed governance put in place. We need to and are doing the appropriate investigations and assuring ourselves as, if you like, guardians of the rating mechanism that sits behind it, that everything is being managed appropriately, prudently, that the right governance is in place and so forth. So I just acknowledge that, and we'll report in due course what the outcome of that is. I'll just make a sweeping statement here that the customer and business performance, operational performance KPIs are stable and in a good place generally. There's a lot of them, so that is obviously a generalisation, but there is no evidence of anything tracking down currently. It's all pretty stable. We've just completed our routine, our normal staff engagement exercises, and I'm pleased to say that things are stable despite a lot of change in the organisation. We are still comfortably sitting in the upper quartile for staff engagement for public sector organisations, and actually I'm pleased to note we're seeing a sustained improvement in staff feedback around the health and safety effort. We're now in a really good place in that regard, and I acknowledge the team and the general management effort that sits in behind that. I will leave it there and ask Ross to cover off financial and other matters. Thanks, Ross.
Thanks, Phil. Good morning, councillors. So as Phil said, the finances for the current year are looking pretty good. Financial year closes today. We've got the results up until May. They will go out in more detail in a memo to the Budget and Performance Committee with the standard sort of numbers and a financial dashboard. Should go out today if it hasn't gone out already. Those numbers show that the capital delivery across the group to the end of May was 86% of budget, so $3.25 billion delivered to that point, and it'll be higher again by year end. In terms of operating spend, all looking favourable, with looking at, where are we? So for the group, 148 million revenue favourable to budget, so revenue was 5% ahead of budget for the year to the end of May, and direct expenditure was 2% or 73 million favourable to budget. Some of that's due to some delay of some costs, some of that's lower public transport costs. A lot of the revenue is higher infrastructure growth charges, operating grants, subsidies, etc. So a whole range of things that make it up, but a very favourable result, and we've achieved or even overachieved the savings year to date as previously reported to the Value for Money Committee. So things are looking very good for the current financial year. Budget and Performance Committee will get that memo and can ask further questions on the detail at the next Budget and Performance Committee meeting. We'll also commence work on the annual report. We don't have the final numbers yet, but all of the work is underway, engaging with auditors, etc., and we'll work through that, and that'll come through in due course. The other processes we're working on, we've kicked off, as you all know, the long-term plan process, lots of work on the strategic direction setting and your input and direction on that. Following that, there'll be a lot of staff advice, and some of that will be financial, and we will start to look through those longer-term trends and work on those that more medium-term financial projections. In terms of the annual plan, you made the decisions on that on the 26th of May, and the annual plan itself is here for adoption on another item on this agenda. And then once you've adopted a final annual plan, then you'll be asked to strike the rates for next year today. In terms of looking at the numbers for the coming financial year and beyond, the budget is one thing, but there is, as we signalled in the budget process, lots of risks and uncertainty. One of the things I talked about last month was depreciation numbers, particularly Auckland transport depreciation. That is a function of the value of our roading assets, which is a function of unit rates, some of which is affected by fuel costs. That is being worked through. We've got independent evaluations come through, and it's kind of looking like not too much change the budget projections. So a big risk around depreciation. I think we've avoided some very unfavourable impacts that might have come our way. So we've looking at that's looking much more comfortable at the moment. So that is one less major risk on our way. But that said, there's still a lot more in terms of the inflation environment, interest rates. That general economic picture still remains uncertain, and the other sort of highly uncertain one is fuel costs. So we are looking very closely at fuel costs, and we will look to bring more information through the course of next financial year. Each month we'll kind of give you a bit more granular view on what the fuel costs are looking. A lot of work has been going on over the last month or so, looking into more detail. What are the contracts? What is the exposure? So working across the group, working with the finance teams and the procurement teams. So the teams have identified about 1,700 contracts that have some kind of fuel exposure or some sensitivity. So it's a very large number. Most of them, though, there is no mechanism in terms of escalation. It's just generally a CPI. CPI escalation. There isn't a specific fuel price contract. There's fuel price provision, so there isn't an automatic flow through. But there are obviously some big ones that we've talked about, such as the public transport contracts, and we are starting to see some of those numbers flow through and impacting the current financial year, although overall the numbers are still looking good. But the indications are about $7 million of impact of higher fuel costs flowing through the public transport contracts through a quarterly fuel indexation. So that's kind of in line with what we've expected and our best estimates at the moment, even though things are looking a bit better in terms of the Middle East. Still, we're seeing crude prices come down, still very volatile, still seeing refined product prices high, and who knows what may happen over the coming months. So we still think that broad range of 25 to 50 million of extra fuel costs that we've talked about for the budget is about right. Hopefully, and with things looking better, we're more towards the 25 than the 50, but it's uncertain and we can't make any guarantees at this point. We are, through some of those contracts, we are getting a few requests with people wanting to look at variations and look at requests for relief. People saying, well, particularly smaller contracts, saying their costs have gone up, they can't manage, they can't deliver the service. Can we please, provide some relief? We've got about 24 active requests at the moment. A small number of those have been agreed to. The exposure there is less than 20,000 per month that's been agreed to. So there is a very rigorous process. We're having a look at these things to see where, do we need to make some adjustments to get services delivered, and we'll do that. But we have taken a very hard line, and there has to be a clear obligation. There has to be, the suppliers doing everything they possibly can to mitigate the fuel consumption, the fuel risks, and it needs to be temporary and just the smallest number possible to achieve the outcome we need to do. So taking a reasonable approach, but also quite a firm approach. The only other thing I'd call out is we've started to look very closely at our own fleet use, so across the group, mainly Auckland Council and Auckland Transport, about 55% of our own vehicle fleet, and the fuel consumption is a very small proportion compared to public transport, but it's important we do what we can. About 55% of the fleet is electrified or hybrid, and about 45% petrol or diesel. And we are seeing some good trends of, fuel usage is a bit lower than it was a year ago, about 4 or 5% less fuel consumption on those petrol and diesel vehicles. So we are tracking that to make sure we're doing what we can. Even though it's small in the scheme of things, we should be trying to minimise our own fuel usage. Happy to take any questions.
I'll just cover one other thing before we go to questions, which the Deputy Mayor's reminded me that we've got some things to skite about here. Recently, there were the national awards from Taitura, which, a reminder, that's the professional body that covers the local government sector nationally. They've recently had their awards. The council group won 2 of the categories. Auckland Transport won an award for their work in the recovery space, looking at more sustainable approaches to repairs and managing the risk of slips in the roading corridor. Quite a significant award. And the Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei Reserves Board was announced as the winner of the Te Tohu Waka Haurua Excellence Award for Māori and Council Partnerships. So that's testament to the work that's happening in that co-governance space coming out of different treaty settlements. So really positive there. We also won an award from the Public Relations Institute of New Zealand, PRINZ. That was for the campaign entitled "Taking the Lead, Protecting at-Risk Communities with Dogged Determination." So that was the public awareness. Yeah, that was obviously about. Oh, actually, Rob, would you like to say something about it? Given you know your team, supported by the comms effort, did this campaign.
Yeah, Stress Jay, that's effectively it's through the campaign that we ran last year where we went out with, hopefully you've seen now, there's 3 good ads that went out in terms of one, which was around effectively trying to create community awareness in terms of the impact that a lot of the roaming dogs attacks are having on the community. So this was great work that was done through the comms and marketing team around producing these 3 ads. One was an elderly lady who was sort of unable to get out because of the impact of dogs. One was the impact of a dog owner who's attacked, and then also on the impact of dogs themselves when they actually are impounded. So a really great campaign that had really good feedback across the board.
And just very finally, we won an award in the asset management area for the program Asset Management Centre of Excellence's data capture program. So this is the discipline that sits behind our asset management practice in the organisation, and Charmaine Okris won an award for the best presentation at the Asset Management Conference in recognition of that program. Thank you, councillors.
That was very positive, thanks. And thank you for the work with the licensing hub. I would commend the fact that you've done something or other which is changing an attitude thing in response to the connection we've now had with the tourism industry. It's a good thing. And I've got a couple of little questions that come out of the new government legislation announcements part of the paper here. The Rail Network Investment Program says $106.9 million is being used to carry out things. How does that compare with the annual rail charges? I think they're just about that big, aren't they? Isn't it 90 million rail charge this year, access, which is a staggering sum really, for something which needs $109 million worth of repairs. Ross, do you know?
I don't have the numbers in front of me. My recollection is around that $90 million a year.
I think we should just keep an eye on that. And then we've got the government is spending $294 million to support implementation of planning and management systems. Now, I notice there's 40 million development of national data standards. Every time we have a national standard, it costs us a lot of money. And one of the things that we're trying to do with AT is to have standardisation of things here for our roads to make them cheaper. So is anybody in the senior management group keeping an eye on whether or not that might be $41 million of problems coming from the government or help?
Yeah, so there is an underlying, and there is an intention to have national IT systems sitting in the consenting area as an adjunct to the RM reforms. We are working with MFE in that space. Obviously, we're the most significant consenting authority in the country, and we need it to work for us, to your point, Your Worship. And we also are doing work with a third party in terms of AI-enabled processing of consents. I think I've mentioned that to you before. So we want to make absolutely sure that we've got alignment between what we need and are doing, and you know, that work at a national level.
Oh, please do keep an eye on it, because These sort of things, they sound terrific when they come out of Wellington, and they slip in standards for the widths of roads which are bigger than we need. They slip in standards of bridge approaches which are more expensive than we need. They slip in standards all over the bloody place which just shove up prices. So please have a caustic, non-believing look at that. Similarly with the fen stuff that you raised. And what will happen if we end up collecting the fire rating, all the usual noises like the Ratepayers Alliance will suddenly scream that we're putting a rates increase up when we're in fact actually now insuring everybody's house. So be very careful of that as well. Those are my questions, and now to be followed by that, I've got Councillor Hills, Sayers, Short Ferry and Lotu Fuli in that order. Councillor Hills, please.
Kia ora. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Mayor. The first question is just on Heart of the City. So obviously it's pretty concerning. We've got the COO of Sky City, the general manager of Park Hyatt, you know, other people being essentially saying we should withhold money and audit. Do we have enough information to be working on that? Because I think I've had a lot of people contact quite concerned about what we're doing. Obviously you can't talk probably openly about what might be happening, but are we investigating?
Well, I'll just talk very much in the round. So we do have tools, obviously, you know, it would be open to you not to strike that targeted rate, but that's certainly not recommended. We do have the ability to withhold monies if we have legitimate concerns. That's a function of the bid policy. I can assure you that Max and other people in the staff are looking at this at the moment. It is appropriate that we assure ourselves that we're not putting money into anything that is suboptimal in terms of governance oversight and what have you, right? So that's the approach we're taking, and we'll make and are making the appropriate investigations.
Thank you. On savings, is that better left for the annual plan to just talk savings?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
On the compliance, it's really helpful, the move forward on the hospitality hub and making it easier. I'm just wondering on music venues, one, and also outdoor dining. On music venues, are we looking at a program of work? There's a lot shutting down. I think some of it is obviously economic, but other parts of it is maybe reverse sensitivity, the constant complaints people get, and my concern that those closing down, there may not be space for them to open up because of the noise. Are we looking at any program of work? Is our noise controls too stringent in areas where we should be encouraging music and life? I'm just a bit worried about what the future looks like in that space, and if there's a way to help.
Through the chair, the answer is yes. So the economic development team are actually looking at the whole live music industry as a whole. Yeah, there are 100%. There are constraints in terms of the noise under the unitary plan, and that's part of those conversations, is how we actually look at those changes and how we support that live music industry. So those conversations are underway.
And just another, on outdoor dining, do we, and we may already do this, do we give people a chance to trial it or lean into some ideas? I get the feeling that people are a bit worried that it won't work but don't want to pay the money straight away. I just think the vibrancy of some of our streets would help with some outdoor dining, but sometimes I think maybe the barriers to just trial it are a bit too high. Is there any way we could, you know, let people have a go for 3 months and see if it works for them and then start charging? Or maybe we already do that.
Through the chair, we don't do that at the moment, but that's something that we'll take away and have a look at it, and all initiatives around how we can better support the hospitality sector is welcome, and we'll definitely look at it.
Perfect. That's awesome. And last question, and I don't know if it requires Parul and Padan to come up, but just around the energy, I've been asking for since I think March, and I've been having chats with Parul and Padan around energy strategy for not just the council but for the city. Just if we get another strike or another issue we've been facing the last 6 months, are we how seriously are we looking into that? Are we uplifting a strategy for our energy consumption? Emissions, yay, but cost, we're quite susceptible to energy spikes.
Through the chair.
Miraculously, they appear.
Through the chair, as mentioned in the memo, the Economic Development Office is working on this, and I do have Perrin here with me to give you a bit of a brief in terms of how we're progressing.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Parin Toko Inua. I'm Parin, I'm the Head of Business Resilience and Sustainability at Economic Development Office. So EDO and ECA, we are working on a piece of work that is looking at analysis of the economically viable transition pathways for energy for Auckland. The pathways are looking at a whole of energy system. It's not just around transport or gas. It's looking at the whole of Auckland and future of economy. The reason we started this work was because of the economic development strategy that we are doing, and knowing that energy is the backbone of our economy. So we need to look at the transition pathways for Auckland. The work itself has got scenario modeling and looking at potential examples of rapid electrification and the impacts on the city and growth if you're not doing it in a smart way, or if you're doing a compact and smart expansion, how would it look like? What is the cost for Auckland? And what will Auckland Council can play in that transition in terms of being a convener and also leading by example for our own assets and how we can help our communities.
Thank you.
Thank you. That Councillor Sayers, please.
Thank you, Worship. Can I just start off by thanking the Deputy Mayor for her kind tribute to these mills this morning, so thank you very much. And yeah, Your Worship, you did right, there was some good news today, so I think it needs to be celebrated and emphasised, which has been done through Phil, so thank you for that. I might just pick up just very quickly, and I know the Mayor has some experience in energy supply to the city, in fact dealing with crises. So in terms of the plan change 120 and the pressures that they will put on electricity consumption coming into it, I don't think we've had the discussion about how the suppliers and generators are going to meet those needs as well. So can we just have some reassurance that those conversations are happening, and there must be challenges that we're putting on those firms?
In terms of the scenario modelling that we're doing, we're working with the growth projection team at Auckland Council and putting it as part of the BAU, or comparing it to the BAU, how we're growing and how we're going to meet the demand, if we will meet the demand. So it is being included in the modelling.
Very good, thank you for that. 3 questions. First one's to do with, I guess, the heart of the city, Phil, and that's because later on we've got an agenda item where we need to confirm, ratify some rate strikes there, and that does include that targeted rate for the in the city. So if we do approve that today, that doesn't preclude, the question is, does that potentially preclude any other options that you might be looking forward at or planning towards around those concerns that have been expressed by the contributors towards that targeted rate, and what has been mentioned by the board members that have left?
No, it doesn't preclude us taking other steps as needed. If we look at it the other way around, I think we've just got to be a little bit careful here, because the consequence of not striking the rate for those purposes means that you then eliminate the option of funding for them downstream when things are, sorted and we're assured of the appropriate governance and so on. And just there are some very practical aspects of this. There are heart of the city's security commitments and things that I think I'm confident you would probably agree we don't want to jeopardise in the process of getting this sorted.
Yeah, thank you for that. The other one is probably to Rob and Mervyn, and just probably more around time frame. So good news story today. Thank you for that. And I appreciated the way you outlined the problem you're trying to solve, and also what you're doing to actually solve it. And I mean, so my question's around the timelines on this. It sounds like you've started on that journey. There's things being implemented, including the hub and IT improvements to the web experience, online experience. How far are we through kind of achieving what you want to achieve, or what are the timelines going forward in terms of, you know, you're 80% there or 90% complete?
Through the chair, I guess the way I always look at it, we should always be looking to continuously improve. In terms of the specifics, the hospitality hub is up and running. The other big component, as Mervyn outlined earlier, is our ICT and our system. So we've just gone through a process around completing a business case on that. It's going through the process at the moment. We've identified a good vendor. So again, the work is actually progressing really well. So again, timelines on that will obviously, like any large ICT project, will probably be, I'd say, a year or so. Don't quote me on that, but you know, but again, like I said, the key for us is just that continuously working with the sector, continuously engaging and continuously improving.
Okay, thanks for that, Rob. That was helpful. And finally, probably a question around unintended costs and perhaps unbudgeted costs. So a bouquet, first of all, the way that you've articulated the way that you're engaging with the Auckland Transport staff and bringing them across as part of this reform sounded really good. You know, it sounded like you're doing the right thing, gave me confidence about you're doing it, trying to create a smooth industrial relations atmosphere as you possibly can, and listening to ideas and incorporating them to make it better before you come back to us with you know, anything finalised. So thank you for that work and your teams. The question around like the IT systems, I've picked up that, you know, the IT systems that we use, financial and others, may be quite different between the two organisations. So can I just ask a general question in terms of the costs that we might be uncovering as we're going through this process, particularly perhaps around IT, but there might be others. Are there any in there that are, I guess, unbudgeted or outside an envelope that we might need to look at expanding to help that reform occur as smoothly as possible?
Yeah, so that's quite a big question, right? There are a few dimensions here just to cover off. We do, you know, Auckland Transport and Auckland Council have different systems. We need to bring them together into one system going forward. That's one of the most critical aspects of this transition process, and we're really down to the wire in terms of being confident around that migration of Auckland Transport and onto Council's SAP system, for example. The systems that are very business specific to public transport are staying with the public transport CCO and are generally in an okay space. There is both risk and opportunity in relation to the national ticketing system, and that's a whole can of worms that we probably haven't got time to do justice to today, but which we need to keep you briefed on because you know, there are challenges in that space to assure Auckland that it gets what it needs in terms of ticketing. So quite a complex area you've just asked about. The final point I'll make is that, you know, the organisation needs to invest in the next generation of technology for our business processes and our systems. The opportunity and the demand for that investment it far outweighs the amount of money that we've provided in budgets currently. So we're going through a process right now of really seriously prioritising where the biggest bang for that technology investment buck is, and what we need to invest in to reduce risk. Again, it's probably not an area that I can do justice to today, but perhaps through the budget committee and through the long-term plan deliberations, there's a discussion for us to have for sure.
Thanks, Phil. I guess that's why I was angling for, so LTP process and some figures coming forward for that. Yep. Okay. Thanks.
Councillor Short, please.
Thank you. Thanks for the update, but my concern at the moment lies around the removal of non-elected members, and Phil, you briefly touched on Hokura, but what I'm more deeply concerned about is the removal of non-elected members to the Audit and Risk Committee. I don't mean to be rude, and I don't mean this in any offence whatsoever, but the skill set that is required to carry out that role effectively is just simply not around this table. So can I ask what you're doing to push back against, I guess, this whole thing, and whether we have a plan B?
We're well aware of that issue. We have raised that directly with Minister Watts, and yeah, who has the ability to give exemptions that would allow independent directors on an audit committee, for example. I think we've heard enough to be reasonably confident that there won't be a problem there, but I can't, honestly, I don't think anyone can speak for the Minister in terms of what the decision would ultimately be, but it's been raised quite strongly by us and more generally by the sector because that is the model that most councils now have.
Thanks, Phil.
Plus, we've got a city deal where you're not supposed to roar off and do stuff like that without working it out with us.
100%.
But we've got an election coming up and they'll just do what they have to do. Councillor Ferry, please.
Kia ora, thank you. I've got two questions. The first is in relation to the Auckland deal and the mention in the city centre bit about an MOU with the Ministry of Education. Is that in relation to discussions around a future school site in the city centre, or is it in relation to something else?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the question. It is not in relation to a school in the city centre. The MOU is a reference to a relationship we're forming with the Ministry of Education around the use of facilities.
Okay. My understanding is that is, while obviously the city centre is an important component of that, that's more across the region. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. The reason I raised the school issue is that, it will be helpful if the Waitemata local board is involved in any discussions around that specifically. They've been hearing rumours that the library is being discussed further, but they're not being included in those conversations.
I can tell you that I met with the chair of the local board yesterday and
Right.
gave an assurance around engagement around any discussions.
Awesome. Yeah. That's really good, Phil. Thank you. Thanks, Max. Then my other question is around the seismic strengthening. The fact that Auckland is now determined to be low risk, what does that mean for the many buildings that we have across the city that have notices on them? Will we be giving them some kind of update on whether they need to keep those notices up, whether they can come down, whether they need to be renewed in some way? And I apologise for asking it here, but I have tried to ask it internally and not got an answer, and seeing as it's in your report, I thought I'd ask now.
I have to confess I'm not sufficiently briefed to answer the question, but can I commit to come back to you?
That'd be great.
And to the wider chamber on that point?
Thank you.
Very good question, eh? Thank you. Councillor Fully.
Kia ora, thanks, thanks Chair, and thanks Phil for the report. I think I share the concerns that many do about what's happened with Heart of the City. I recently met with one of our biggest bid managers in our area in Manukau, and she's shared with me concerns across the business sector as well around that. But also she sort of said to me that there were there seem to be issues with many bids across the city. So my question is about that. Is what's happened at Heart of the City, and I'm mindful of what happened in Hunters Corner and Papatoetoe as well, where we did end up striking a zero targeted rate. Is there something else going on, and can our bid team, is there more that our bid team can do to support in that space? Kia ora.
Look, I think it's good that you've raised that issue, and you know, with nearly 50 bids around the region, I don't know whether I should expect frequent problems, but certainly, you know, it's in the nature of, you know, when you've got 50 organisations, you're going to occasionally have some speed bumps, issues of tension between the boards and the employees with the bids and so on. And not everyone within the bid's going to agree, and it creates sort of some internal, you know, political tensions, for sure. I think we can do more, but I have to say I think the bid policy, which you've signed off previously, is pretty robust in terms of providing the right foundation for these. We can probably do a little bit more in terms of proactively, you know, monitoring the bids and early identification of issues. So I can commit to taking that away, recognising I think I'm right in saying we've got 1.5 staff in this bid space, so it's fairly stretched. Yeah, but we'll have a look. And look, if people are aware of any specific issues with bids, then I would suggest please bring them forward so we can get staff to have a closer look at them.
Yep. Kia ora. I do have a couple in my area that I'll forward information about. And just one last thing, they did also raise that there used to be some sort of a collective or a hui that happened before COVID with all the bid managers that would get together, and then because of COVID that stopped, and it just seems to have not been restarted. Is there any plans to bring that back, to maybe build some support within the bid system?
I'm not aware, but I'm very happy to take that away and see whether we can do such an initiative.
Good question. As a board member of the Otahu one for the last 10 years, up until recently, some of the small ones are quite well run, and the Heart of the City is one with the most money, so we do need to get to the bottom of that overall, and the person from the Otahu one is now on, who's a very good operator, is now on the small business advisory body to the council as well, so that we are bringing in good practice and spreading it as much as we can. Okay, thank you very much. I have no more questions. I do have a question. Councillor Watson.
Okay, thank you. Ross, you mentioned something about in the financial update about the effects of some of the big transport or contracts coming through, probably in relation to the bus contracts. I'm just curious to know what check, if any, we have over them in terms of due diligence. I assume that Auckland Transport have their own processes, but when we're dealing with very substantial sums of money, so I look at the one that came through in March of this year, 755 million awarded to Kinetic. Last year, Ritchie's 1.068 billion contract, and before that there was another big one with Transit. What's the process as far as you know, our finance team goes, as far as going through these contracts, examining them, see how tight or otherwise they are? As I said, I'm sure Auckland Transport have their checks. Is there another check over and above that?
So for Auckland Transport, contracts. So I think you're right, it largely sits with staff at Auckland Transport to manage that, and the board of Auckland Transport are the ones that provide the governance and decision making around that, with their own audit and risk committee providing assurance around it. So that is part of the governance structure of having an Auckland Transport board to make those kind of calls. In terms of going forward with transport reform, the proposal is basically a shared. The proposals for a shared procurement model. So there will be a central team looking at procurement across both Auckland Council going forward and the PTCCO. So there'll be more opportunities for those things in the future. Although the governance structure you've got in place is, PT procurement contracts will sit with a separate board, but the roading contracts and maintenance contracts will come to Auckland Council. So ultimately that comes to the governing body, and the Value for Money Committee will have a role in terms of large contracts over the delegation threshold.
So given the sums of money that are involved here, and in some cases over $1 billion, in Auckland Transport's purview to date, is there any, like some big organisations do, any sort of kind of selective examination of contracts or monitoring from independent authorities? Like I'm not saying all the contracts, but picking odd ones out at random to run the ruler over them. Is that part of their due process?
It's not part of the standard process. Those responsibilities fall to the Board of Auckland Transport. Where things require more budget, where it's unbudgeted spend, we will work really closely with Auckland Transport and through the finance team to understand what are the drivers of that, and understand the financial implications of large things. If it's within a budget, the delegation sits to Auckland Transport, and that organisation and that board are accountable for that. There have been some occasions where Auckland Transport have invited people, such as myself, onto a challenger panel for some contracts, and we did that recently with some ferry procurement contracts. That is largely because there were some non-standard arrangements in terms of financing arrangements. I think that's a good model, and we should try and encourage more of that in a challenger sense, not necessarily to cut across the board's responsibility, but to provide that extra assurance. The other piece of the puzzle is there is work progressing rapidly. We're in the final stages of a group procurement strategy, which provides an opportunity to think about how we can improve things in that procurement space across the group, but we do need to be mindful of where those governance responsibilities ultimately lie.
Thank you for that.
Just as sorry, Your Worship, just as an aside, you might be interested to know that the procurement function is indicated to move into Ross's finance area to bolster the sort of commercial perspective on it.
Right, I think you can retire, and I'll ask if there's any debate on these issues. But thank you for the work, particularly about the licensing hub. I can tell you from practical experience it's helpful. There's no speakers, so sorry. There you are. Councillor Williamson.
Yeah, look, just a very small comment regarding the national ticketing system. I'll leave all the tech stuff because that's a disaster in my view and needs a lot more scrutiny on it. But there are some other issues where we could be really blindsided by some things. This council, correctly or incorrectly, decided to change the over 65 allowance for people that they could travel all day after 9 o'clock. The NTS is going to lock that in, that you have to go back to the 3:30 onwards being dropped again, and only from 9 o'clock. Now, I'm not going to argue the merits of the case, but I'm going to tell you that I know what a landmine sticking out of the sand looks like, and not to stand on it. And that will become a political explosion if we are forced, because of the technology platform, to change a policy that I think we would want to look at in isolation of the tech forcing us that way. So just a bit of a heads up, and it's not the only case, but they're trying to put fixed sets of rules into the database, and the national thing for the 65 compensation thing, or allowance, whatever they call it, discount, was up until 9 you pay full, and then you get it till 3:30, and then it would be back to full again. That's not what we operate in Auckland. We operate it for the over 65s from 9 o'clock on. And that will not be part of how and I should declare I've got an interest. Because I'm old.
But you don't catch buses, so it's all right.
But I don't use public transport much, but
Councillor Foley, please.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to quickly commend the team on the animal management ads and the ad campaign that's been happening. It's been very, very successful in our communities especially, and I especially like the one with the older nana. I think that's really, it's very different. It's a very different approach to what we've had in the past, and I think it hits home a lot more in terms of how roaming dogs and how aggressive dogs can affect everybody in the community. So just want to commend the team on that. There has been some negative blowback as well, but that's from a very small, very specific, unfortunately not very nice part of our community, and the chair of Regan Safety Committee, Councillor Bartley, unfortunately has been the target of some of that very negative blowback as well. So just want to raise that as well in this space. Kia ora. Thanks, team.
Thank you for that, Councillor Foley. Councillor Henderson, please.
Yeah, thanks. I don't want to derail the meeting too much, but we're talking about government relations and upcoming legislation, and just wanted 30 seconds to point something out. The antisocial road use legislation it will hopefully be passed tonight. That's the indication that we have. And that will increase fines for intentionally creating excessive noise from vehicles, which has been a huge issue for Aucklanders. From $50 to $300, and court-ordered fines going from $1,000 to $3,000. So hopefully, by the end of tonight, siren battles with Celine Dion at 2 a.m. will be a thing of the past. And yeah, just very proud to see this after many years of lobbying, and just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
What about the Finger Boys?
Tamaki Drive will be thrilled. So will the Te Atatu residents. Thank you.
You forgot the Finger Boys.
I'll put the motion that we receive this. Thank you very much. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, carried. I'm going to declare a 5-minute personal comfort break, and because the next item is quite a big one. Thank you.